Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next session of AI Talks. Today, we'll be talking about scaling AI in the era of 5G. So, today we have with us Hasit Trivedi, CTO Digital Technology and Global Head of AI Tech Mahindra. And along with him, we have Tony Sceales. Tony heads 5G program development at UK Government's Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. He has the experience of 25 years in telecom and technology industry, and his current role in DCMS deals in encouraging successful 5G investment and adoption in UK. Without further ado, I would hand it over to Hemang, who would take the session forward.
Thanks, Monica. Hello, everyone. The way AI has revolutionized the technology roadmap for a lot of our clients, and the way industry has changed drastically, and of course, pandemic has further accelerated the digital journey. Similarly, 5G is playing a very critical role and will play a very critical role in evolution of AI, evolution of this industries. We're going to talk about a lot of this use cases, a lot of this, what is it going to happen in future. I am very excited with this to host this session. I'm Hemang Naik, Global Head of Solutions and Offering for AI in Tech Mahindra. Thank you, Tony and Hasit, for joining me here. My first question actually to both of you. I'll start with Tony first though. Tony, when we hear about 5G, what is it that first thing comes to your mind? What is your quick view on 5G?
Thanks, Hemang. So, nice to be with you all today. So, I think the first thing that strikes everybody about 5G is speed, and that's obviously important in the way we describe the technology. So, we do get much higher speeds of transmission of data, but we also get some other important factors. I think probably capacity is also important. So the number of devices that can connect to the network within a cell at one time, and the simultaneous ability of those devices to communicate with much greater speed and capacity in each channel. So it's much more efficient in use of spectrum, which is a key factor for operators. And it also, to me, is probably more importantly, is it's a more democratic type of network. In other words, it's a network that you don't necessarily have to be a mobile network operator in order to run such a network. So private networks and hybrid networks will start to play a much bigger role in the era of 5G than they did before. So those are my sort of initial thoughts. Probably we can go into that in a lot more detail.
Thank you, Tony. Hasit, what's your quick view?
Yeah. I think the 5G reminds me the globalization phenomena which started probably 2 decades back. Correct. I think that it was borderless phenomena. Correct. So the goods can move from anywhere to anywhere. That was a phenomena 2.5 decades back happened. And I think 5G will be doing similar thing. I suspect it will further make world flatter. So world is a flat was a 2 decades old phrase when the globalization came, and I think 5G will make it flatter because any kind of services potentially can be done remotely with the kind of resilient network and kind of bandwidth we'll get. Where the object reside will potentially become immaterial, and thus potentially remote will be new on-premise. Right? That is a world phenomena potentially will have. Where while it's a remote, but you will treat like on-premise, and with the mix and match of metaverse and AI technology, your experience will not be diluted despite being remote. Correct. And I think this is the power of this 5G technology, which will be able to instantiate a metaverse kind of scenario rapidly with the AR, VR, AI all coming together with the cloud. So it is a gluing technology which will bring these things together and will amplify the overall efficiency of the economy of any country, and will add to the economy of any country. And I think beside the economic, I think it is a much more social impact as well. Correct? So world will be safer, more educated, and less hunger. I think I think this power of this technology like 5G, remote education, AI-led or AI-led agriculture, which is improving the productivity of agriculture, and the technology which will be used to make human life safer, be it a human on a road or a human working in a shop floor or a human working in mines, correct? With the connectivity availability, with the high quality connectivity, I think that would be the game changer, social impact on the enterprises and the mankind. And once again, a telco will have a opportunity to play a larger ecosystem player, beside being only the bandwidth provider. So this is a lifetime opportunity where telco potentially monetize, if monetized effectively, can become a larger ecosystem player, and gain economically significantly when compared to any other industry. So that's the initial thought. Flatter world is ahead for us.
Great thoughts.
I didn't know I'd see Hasit as a flat earther, but that's good to hear. Can I just respond to a couple of those points you made, Hasit? Because I think it's a couple of really interesting.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
One of them was that you talked about the opportunity for the operators and for the service providers, and I think that's true. But I also think there's a huge opportunity for the systems integrator, and for the companies that are bringing this all together. I think that often that operators really sometimes struggle to talk the language of the end user customer. And I think that's where systems integrators can play a really, really strong role, because often you're much closer as an integrator to the end customer and to their challenges than an operator typically is. So I think that's a really, really key thing to see, and particularly with private networks. And one of the things that's these big trends is spectrum liberalization. So in the UK we have local access licenses and we have shared access licenses, which have slightly different characteristics. But the fact about the shared access licenses is that an enterprise can own its own spectrum, which means that they can define a campus or a virtual campus as their own territory for their own mobile operations. And that's a very different thing from using something like Wi-Fi, which is a much less dependable, much less performant network than a cellular network. So I think those are really just those key factors I'd like to just bring in there.
Thank you, Tony. And a lot of keywords and buzzwords, which I'm going to summarize a little later at the end of the sessions. Flat world, boundaryless, a lot of them have been talked about. And I think one of the, just before I go forward to the next question, one of the point which Hasit mentioned, and I think Tony, you have mentioned about democratic type of network, right? And the remote will be a new premises. I think I am seeing that already happening. A lot of my friends are on the road in the early mornings. They'll connect from the hotel, work through the day, next day, because they are bikers, right? They love biking and going around. So I think that is already kind of started, but I'm sure it's going to give a big boost and hope to everybody across, right? Absolutely. Tony, my question next for you, and I've been reading about this last week as well. See, UK has been one of the early adopters for 5G, and the journey started way back in 2019. And of course, the prep has been much ahead before that, right? Before it was launched in 2019 and all. And I was actually reading about the early adoption of 5G, having an airport having a 5G connectivity, trains having a 5G connectivity, which started 3 and 2 years back respectively. So it means that UK is quite ahead in the journey of 5G adoption across. So what's your view on the UK progress with 5G so far in the last 3-4 years, or ahead basically? Yeah.
Okay, so we started our journey back in probably 2017, when the government committed £200 million to a fund to invest in building 5G testbeds and trials. And that started the journey with investment with the academic community, with universities, working with the major vendors. So Nokia, Ericsson, and Huawei all joined in with our leading universities in research. So we contributed to the standards. We attracted that initial investment from the major vendors to come and work here. And Vodafone and King's College and Ericsson put together the first 5G call over a network, was done here in London, or between here and Newbury in the UK. And that was just the start of a whole series of those kind of milestones of progress. So we got in early, and the government committed money into the process. That fund was under the terms of shared investment. So it's collaborative. So every project that we fund is collaborative and has to have multiple parties in it. You can't just bid for it as an individual company or as an individual. And you have to share the outcomes of those trials and projects. And so now whiz forward 4 or 5 years, and we are now at the point of demonstrating the outcomes of all of those test beds and trials. So we've got over 40 test beds now here in the UK, all of which have experimented in use cases as diverse as the far rural, where we're looking at connecting, as it pointed to, connecting up citizens for education, for healthcare, for running their businesses in rural environments, for their personal security, for travel and transport, right the way through to dense urban deployments, where we're looking at the logistics of implementing really high density networks in the middle of the West Midlands in Birmingham, and also in other major cities. So that process, though, triggered early investment from our operators in 5G. And they all started, as you said, they started investing in 5G deployments in 2019. I think that was a very early and brave investment from all of them, and a brave investment from the government as well, because the standard wasn't complete. We were still working with very incomplete capabilities. So those deployments started off very much as non-standalone 5G. In other words, it's 5G sitting on top of a 4G network. And we're still waiting for really 17 of the 3GPP standard, which will allow us to deploy the very, very low latency and very high numbers of devices, kinds of use cases in the public network. In the private networks that the trials mostly are in, they're already using many of those features already. And we've got some really exciting trials that have come out. And I think everything from remote capsule endoscopy, in other words, where you take a pill with a camera in it that allows your gut to be photographed. Then there's an AI application on the back end of that interprets the images and diagnoses and screening for anything that you really wouldn't want to have in your gut. And that's all done from the comfort of your own home. So you no longer have to occupy a surgeon and an operating theatre, travel to the venue. You can do it all at home, all over the network, privately, securely, and with a resilient network. So it's a fantastic change that has been driven alongside. And I think the other thing that's accelerated things is obviously is COVID. The pandemic has made us all much more accepting of those kinds of user experiences of being at home and visiting your GP virtually, of being screened, being treated, and having aftercare, all from a remote location. So it's exactly what you were just saying in terms of work, but this is about how you consume public services as well. Same is true with education, of course.
Great, Tony. I think you talked about the education, private. I'm sure it's going to drastically benefit, across the sectors. I just wanted to confirm one thing, Tony. I was actually reading, and because I'm obviously reading it from the news and whatnot, right? What I read is by 2028, maybe in another 3 to 5 years down the line, UK will be completely covered across, including all the rural areas across the globe, across UK. With 5G across. Is that a correct news or statement? Yeah.
You're 1 year late. It's actually 2027 is the goal.
Okay.
And that's for sort of global coverage in the UK. And right. Most of our networks by then will be standalone 5G. so they won't be reliant on 4G networks anymore. And I think that's an ambition, and I think the reality is more likely to be a bit more nuanced. I think we'll see a mix of different types of networks coexisting for some time to come, in the same way that today we have 2G, 3G, 4G sitting alongside 5G. We have really concrete plans for removing our 2 and 3G networks over the next few years, as we're going to remove our copper network. So our public switch telephone network, our PSTN, will also disappear over the course of the next few years. And those processes have started now. So we've already started the process of withdrawing those legacy networks, which frees up cash and frees up operating space and innovation capability in the operators. So they're all very excited about no longer having to carry those legacy networks and being able to meet their future needs and capabilities from a series of advanced networks. But we can see, Wi-Fi 6, we can see 4G coexisting for quite a long time alongside 5G. And we can see satellite technologies also coming in to play a big role. And I think that the low Earth orbit satellite networks that Starlinks and OneWeb that we see growing very quickly now are really starting to play a significant part in adding to the coverage and complementing the 5G networks.
All right, great. Thanks to. So I just want to move on to more towards 5G and AI, that combination. A lot of course hyperscalers are coming with the clouds. We are talking about edge computing and digital twin now. So if I have to see 5G along with AI, how is 5G going to help AI adoption? Hasit, I just want to ask this question to you. How is 5G drive AI adoption?
I think there are two aspects of 5G. One is, of course, speed and low latency. But what appeals to me is a resiliency. I think the promise of resiliency attracts me a lot, because if the network is reliable and trustworthy and resilient, I think you can do a lot of work which is for the safety of mankind and safety of the various people kind of thing. So be it a remote surgery, be it safety in plants and machineries, be it a disaster management area. These are the areas where you need of course you need a speed, but reliable network and resiliency is very high. And then processing huge amount of data with the cloud and AI combined together can be a game changer to the human life. And I hope that this promise telco meets, and it should not be focused only on speed, because resiliency can save life and be not only life on a mission critical industrial projects also. It will be a good economic value to implement use cases for the industrial usage as well. But in healthcare and safety, disaster management, and smart city aspect, the 5G will be a game changer for citizen, and that will lead to a lot of video, image, and sound processing on a real-time basis, which is typically a bandwidth and compute and the AI hungry. So today, most of the because of limitations, these use cases are sits on the lab only. It doesn't go at a scale. So I think that is something which will get amplified with the advent of 5G. Secondly, purely from AI perspective, AI will become boundaryless. Again, I'm using word boundaryless repetitively, but a distributed AI concept would come into picture, where the inferencing can happen at one place, training can happen on other place, and data processing can happen other place, because the movement of data need not to be restricted because of the lack of bandwidth and reliability of network. Data can move very swiftly from anywhere to anywhere, and you do right pieces of work at right place. Today, you get constrained either by edge device, compute and storage capability, or if you don't have edge, everything happens on server side. So with the advent of the 5G network capabilities, this whole artificial constraint will get removed. The edge compute will be much more powerful. It will have a larger storage area, and you will be rebalancing the AI workload at various places. And distributed AI will drive to a lot of real-time AI use cases. Take an example. of a case, assuming that we are having this panel discussion where I am speaking in English and Tony doesn't understand English and he speaks in German, and Hemang, you probably understand French and neither and don't understand English or French. Now, on a real-time basis, how we can communicate with the power of AI as well as the 5G? This is you can still have a conversation. AI doing real-time transcription and translation both for you and the converting back to the voice. All this thing will be reality. The language will no more be the barrier for human-to-human communication. So this is again a game changer possibilities, which will amplify the education sector also, correct? So because today education recipient may not be aware of the languages in which education content exists. So apart from that safety and human life, this is one aspect which appears to me that real-time language and voice processing will be a game changer. And of course, the lot of industrial use cases or corporate use cases of doing real-time analytics on consumer going to retail store, looking at the movements of the individuals and through the computer vision on what discussions they are happening, you can understand the customer much better. So tons of those kind of use cases will also be there. But many of the things which are not possible today because of not having a resilient network, I think that will just change the paradigm of the AI in a form of distributed real-time processing, distributed AI and real-time processing.
Thanks, Hasit. Tony, your view on this, how would 5G help AI adoption further?
Well, I think we see it everywhere. It's already happening. AI is already prevalent in many of our aspects of our lives, whether it's when we apply for credits or we apply for an insurance policy or we go to the doctor. AI is already a fact in our life. I totally agree with that as those functions become more real-time and more mission critical, then the resilience of the network, the security of the network, and the capacity of it to be there all the time wherever we need it is critical. I love the idea of the polyglot AI that allows us to speak with whoever, wherever we are, and the language barrier to sort of disappear to a large extent. I think also just to talk about a specific example, that one of our trials that we have co-funded. By the way, before I go into the specific one, I'd just like to draw your listeners' attention to uk5g.org, which is a website and a community which, in fact, Tech Mahindra is a registered supplier on that website already. That's free to join, free to be a member, and you'll get ongoing updates on what's happening with the trials and the ongoing deployment progress. So uk5g.org. One of the trials is called Smart Junctions, and it's deployed in Manchester, and one of our largest cities, the home of a couple of football clubs you may have heard of. They have implemented some technology there, which is smart cameras. They're AI-driven cameras for the traffic lights. So they control the sequence of changes of the traffic lights, which everybody would be familiar with. So very often, most of the technology that controls traffic lights today was invented in the 1960s, and it relies on some pretty archaic capabilities. With the cameras, and they're built by a company called Vivacity here in the UK, and they have AI on the camera. So what that means is that they can process the images that they're seeing in real time on the camera. They only need to send anything back to base, back to the control room server, if there is an incident. So 99% or 99.9% of the images never leave the camera. They don't need to. The second clever thing they've done is they've created a mesh network using 5G around an area of Manchester where they've linked together these traffic light cameras, traffic light control cameras, and they game them. They use the cameras to game each other to see who can distribute the traffic most efficiently. And they get points. They win points against each other by being efficient at distributing traffic. And what they've discovered is that they can reduce traffic congestion by 20%. And you can imagine the value of that nationally if you can replicate that kind of win. I think that's a really, really super example of a couple of things there where you've got AI at the edge, as it described. You've got edge compute. You don't need very much edge storage there because you're not keeping the images for any length of time. But you've got very efficient and very reliable communications, both to the other cameras and back to base. And because it's a mesh, if one of the links in the mesh breaks, the mesh still self-heals and manages that situation. It's a really smart piece of thinking. And the last piece of the puzzle, which is, I think, is really brilliant, is they then use the mesh network. It's also then resold as a commercial bandwidth for anybody who wants to use it who's in the area. So that also means that it's self-funding, which means that you don't have a big capital cost and a big overhead of running that process after the event. I think it's just an incredibly smart piece of thinking about how you deploy AI to reduce the amount of meaningless work that people had to do before. In other words, somebody would have had to sit and watch those images in a control room. They no longer need to do that. They can do a much higher value job of controlling the mesh and reporting on the process of the processing of traffic across the whole network. And similarly, there are plans now to extend that across Birmingham. So again, we're starting to see that scale up of those kind of capabilities over much wider areas to get the economic benefit. And that's really the whole point, is it's no good running a £200 million program of trials if they don't turn into real innovation and real value at the end of it. So that's the next stage of the journey, is now working with the trialists to make sure that they all have a sustainable way forward to make the value of their findings really, really solid. And we're willing to share those globally. So we would love to invite India as a global partner to come and work with us on that, to see where you can get value from what the work we've done and where we can learn from you too.
Fantastic, Tony. And thanks for the invitation. We'll definitely be looking forward to this. I have one last question. Tony, I'll start with you on this one. The way 5G is playing a critical role for AI adoption, I'm sure AI will also play a significant role for 5G and 5G networks. So what do you think, what role does AI play in the 5G network space, basically?
Great question. So when I first started on the 5G program for my 5G journey, I sat down with one of the smartest people in the UK who knows about networks, a guy called William Webb, Professor William Webb, and we discussed what 5G was about. And he said that this was the first generation of mobile networking, that it was really impossible for a single individual to fully understand all of the aspects of the standard. And I think that that's a really, this is coming from somebody who really understands that. So these networks are now very, very complicated. They've become very disaggregated. So with Open RAN as a standard, the radio access network being broken up into component parts that multiple companies can build and bring together in a solution. Each of those areas is now programmable and individually configurable in real time. So there are major components in there. The RIC, which has which looks after the whole core of the RAN process, has a series of components which can be programmed in real time, and those can be both programmed ahead of time, and they can also be reprogrammed in real time by AI type processing. So in other words, the network can learn itself about how it's performing, where there is new capacity needed, where there is new capability needed, and adapt the resources of the network to serve us as the human race better, and serve the planet better. So I think all of the things that, as it said earlier, about this being a generation of technology, the AI and the 5G together, that's going to serve us as citizens and as human beings well, I think is absolutely true. I think the AI is not only enables that, but it's also critical because it's no longer possible for humans to manage these networks. There'll be too many components, too many pieces, too much complexity between those areas of where this belongs and where is this physical network, where's it in the cloud, how does it interact with solutions, how do the many different devices come together, and how do you make sure that that's efficiently managed? That's an AI challenge. It's no longer a human challenge, in my opinion.
Hasit, what's your view on this one?
No, I think 5G will be amplifying AI. I think 5G network without AI will be a distant dream, I think. Because 5G for a telco is a very costly technology, correct? They have to pay upfront a lot of money, and network setup is also very costly. And if it has to give the ROI for the business, a lot of things needs to be automated in an intelligent manner. And that's where the AI would come into picture, starting from the rollouts, because being a costly technology, the sequencing of rollout becomes very important to go to the areas where it's most profitable for a telco. To identify which one is profitable, you need a lot of analysis, the traffic analysis, RPU analysis, understanding where all the cable network already exists, correct? Fiber network. Wherever fiber network already exists, potentially speed is not the constraint in that area, and 5G will not be adding anything extra on top of it. So there are multiple dimensions of taking decisions of rollout, and these all needs to be taken with the conjunction of the technology like AI, because it can process so much of data to provide you guidance on the rollout strategy. And of course, the technology like automation will also come into picture, because if you see the 5G rollout, millions of test cases needs to be executed to ensure that it meets its promises of resiliency, low latency. And without technology, this is just humanly not possible to do it in efficient manner. And ensuring the assurance of the network will also be the area where the continuously monitoring of network, potentially through something called digital twin, will come into picture, where you mimic the physical world of network into your command center, digital command center, and you are able to monitor, actionize, setting out command center, and it becomes an intelligent network management. If it is going to break up, AI predicts where it's going to break up. It's able to self-heal itself. Intelligent switching of traffic, because the traffic has to be managed more smartly rather than rule-based. So it depends on Tony talked about the UK experiment on the road traffic, intelligent light signaling mechanisms. I think that similar traffic routing would be needed on telco side with the smartest possible AI engine, because the bandwidth is costly in 5G, and more and more data can move without congestion will create more profitability, and that would require super intelligent AI element to ensure that while traffic increases, but it doesn't lead to congestion, and at the same time breakdown has to be reduced. So be it a rollout, during rollout, or on a steady state basis for assurance purpose and ensuring that you have the bandwidth utilization in most optimal manner, the AI will be playing a critical role. I think purely it's a ROI for the 5G rollout. I think it can't live without AI. And as Tony said, I think it becomes so complex you can't manage humanly. So it has to be software driven, and be it action or be it a decision making, both has to be machine driven, and that's where the AI and automation both will come into picture in a big manner.
All right. Thank you, Hasit. Thank you, Tony. A lot of good insights which has come through the session. Very quickly summarizing, I think boundaryless is the new word for 5G, which I'm hearing now. I heard this about data with social media and all coming up together, but now I think I completely align with that. Safety, security. I think Tony gave you example about the traffic light with the video cameras, and I know only 1 or 2% of the images going to the security or out of the traffic lights, right? All remains there. So I think that's a great example. AI-led agriculture. I think hunger is one of the very important pain area across the world, right? And we need to solve that for. I'm sure AI-led agriculture, 5G prop should play a very critical role. Speed, capacity, now looking at all of this, I am thinking it's going to be another democratization of network, so to say, right? Which will come in play with 5G. Thank you so much, Hasit and Tony, for your time today. It has been a fantastic session. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. It was
Absolutely.
really a pleasure to talk with you. Yeah.
And you too, Hasit. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for such an insightful session. And I look forward to the questions that our viewers will raise, and we'll see how scaling AI goes in the 5G era. Thank you so much.